What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room Podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius. Yesterday, we had our first day of Lakers training camp, where we heard from JJ Redick, LeBron, and Max Christie. And within Redick's comments, D, we got some unusual an unusual level of information. That may be the case on Redick. I've enjoyed the last couple coaches we've had have guarded lineup stuff like they were state secrets. And Redick's like, this is my starting lineup. A couple weeks ago with Zach Lowe. And yesterday was like, I'm looking to have a 9-man rotation, and listed some of the guys that would be in that. He left out Connect, although if they're doing 9 instead of 10, I expect Connect to be the 10th guy. So want to talk to you a little bit about that today, at least in the first couple segments. We got a couple other things we want to hit in the last segment. So talk to me, D. We have a little bit more clarity on where Redick's head's at.
So I'm going to kick it back to you really quickly, Pete. You've coached an actual team before. What is your ideal rotation, like number, in terms of like keeping both from your own experience, but also since you've been a fan like of the NBA for a long time? What's your ideal number to say, like, this is how we can keep our number of guys engaged, assuming you have 10 to 11 guys who you feel comfortable playing?
I like 9 overall. My coaching experience was in high school. You have 8-minute quarters. You have teenagers who can run all day. I had one kid, he won the MVP of the league that year, Isaiah. We might have him on the pod one of these days. Great kid. And I figured out one day, I was like, I don't need to take him out at all. You know, like we have 10 league games on the season. 82 is a whole nother monster to get through that. And so I like 9 because if you have that number of players that can play in a game, I think we have 11. It gives you a little bit of slack. I can hear the ghost of Mike Trudell saying, you're not going to have your top 9 guys very often. And he's absolutely right about that. And so, yeah, on paper at this time of year when we haven't played a game, oh yeah, who's it going to be? But it gives you, I think, a little bit of slack to be able to like, okay, this guy's out for the day. This guy sprained an ankle. And I'm curious how he structures it. I have ideas on like what the backup roles are. Specifically, I think you have like a backup guard. Then you have a guardish type of forward, like a small wing, then a bigger wing, say a Vando type, and then you have the big spot. And then I think that at each of those positions, you have sort of the third string guy that's the next man up. And so this all makes sense to me, kind of where Redick's coming from. I think for this particular team, 9 is the way to go.
I think 9 is the way to go as well. I also think 9 is the way to go when you have the requisite amount of versatility across those 9 players. And so I will say this. I think the Lakers have that if you are structuring the starting group in a certain way in terms of managing like what their overlap is and how many starters are in the game at any given time. And so we often talk about the bench as if 4 or 5 dudes are all going to check in together like it's hockey line changes. And that's not how things work.
That's not how it works. Yeah.
And so building out a 9-man rotation is perfectly great. But if there's one starter in the game at a time, or sometimes even only 2 starters in the game at a time, I think you may need to play more dudes because you may not have the requisite amount of skill sets covered across the entire 9-man rotation because the Lakers, I don't think, are versatile enough necessarily, particularly at the backup, like forward spots to say, oh, well, we can survive without too many of these guys. And so to me, Pete, a 9-man rotation signifies as much about Redick's intentions about how many starters he's going to play at a time and how he's going to slot those personnel groupings. And is he going to sort of partner guys together, Braun and Austin, AD and D'Lo, Rui and whoever, right? Where you are then manufacturing more complete lineups to sort of be out there to compete over the course of a full 48 minutes.
I'm curious what those positions look like relative to the talent that we have. So like not every 9-man rotation is the same. And I think that you could look at our team offensively and say, there are 3 potential lead guards in the starting lineup. And to your point about this isn't hockey subs, and this gives us a little signaling in terms of how many starters Redick wants to keep in the game along with those bench groups. I'm curious to what degree, so I think Gabe's gonna be one of those 9 guys. Like I said, I think Connect is gonna be the 10th guy that's out of that. But that is a pivot point for me, is how much he relies on those 3 guys and having, say, 2 of them in the game at any given time, or at least the vast majority of the time, to sort of absorb those type of ball handling abilities. Because then I think it becomes a question of like, what do you do at your forward, your wing type of spots, where I do want to zero in there a little bit later, in that I think the Lakers have very distinctive choices in the types of players that they have at those spots.
I also think that there are ways to skew lineups more in a defensive direction versus an offensive direction,
Exactly.
and how much you want to try to balance groups as well. Because in theory, JJ can go to like a really defense heavy lineup if he wants and really not struggle too much offensively, if that makes sense, right? So he could have, to me, if you have AD, Vando, and Max on the court, you are going to have like a requisite amount of defensive size and athleticism.
Get some rebounds. Yep.
Where then, if next to Max, you've got a D'Lo, okay, great. And then who is the next dude? And if the next dude is even like a Rui, ooh, that's interesting, right? A lot of size there. If the next guy is potentially Christian Wood, very similar. Like, oh, okay, a lot of size there. You could also go in a totally different direction and play someone like Gabe and quadruple down on defense, right? And say we've got a couple of different, or 2 or 3 different point of attack options. If you consider Max a point of attack guy, I'm viewing him more and more as a contained point of attack guy, but I'm interested to see if Redick asks him to pressure more, which is something that Max has been talking about too.
Absolutely. And it depends. There's so much you can do coaching wise around that, where it's like, so Max is a guy where you can kind of go through his chest a little bit, but if you have things around that, if every other guy on the court is a defender, you can work around that, right? And so that lineup that you were talking about is like, I think that group could switch. Max is probably the weakest switcher of those, and he's still great length. He's going to compete. And so if he can just hold his spot, again, not necessarily guaranteed, but that's what you have to do. You can work in tandem, where like you can be outsized, but if you can hold your spot, just buy time for the next guy to come over, then you can really do something there. And so, yeah, I think that it speaks to, there's a level of versatility. And also what caught my ear, D, was he laid out the starting lineup, like we said a couple of weeks ago, but very much framed this as this is an open competition. You guys are in a battle for that. And I love that. There has to be a certain amount of let them fight to training camp.
Yeah, it's like the scene from The Dark Knight, right? Where the Joker walks in and he breaks the pool cue in half, and he's just like, and we're having open tryouts, right? To see who survives. And I think to a certain extent, JJ is putting it out there that guys are going to compete. Maybe it was a Freudian slip, but he did say competition for that 9th spot. And I do think that he has ideas about who's going to play and who's not. I also think that we can start to get in some deductive reasoning about who actually is in competition for those last couple of spots. So let's take an early break here, Pete. And when we come back, I want to dive into that idea. So we got the starting 5. There's 5 of the 9. I had said this on Twitter, but one of those 9 dudes is also going to have to be a backup center, unless you're not going to play a backup big at all.
Please don't not play a backup big.
Yeah. So we had talked about Hayes, and Hayes sort of saying like, oh, my role is going to be bigger to start the year. So Hayes is already slotting himself into one of those 9 slots, at least at the beginning, while Wood is out. And then maybe it will be a competition between Wood and Hayes. So that's already 6. Max Christie is getting a lot of love from everyone.
Has really stood out. It seems like he's written in pen in the rotation.
Yeah, and so that's 7. So there's 2 more slots. Jared Vanderbilt is a guy who started a bunch of games for this team, and he makes $10 million a year. And Gabe Vincent was signed to the MLE last summer and had a lost season. And so when we talk about spots 8 and 9, it seems like we could talk about, Cam is in competition and JHS is going to have a chance to compete. And he didn't mention Connect, but JJ also said, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone. And Connect was clearly the guy that he was forgetting. And so that's 5 guys for those last 2 spots, basically, or 4 guys for those last 2 spots. I'm assuming you think that those last 2 spots are Vando's and Gabe's, and that Connect is the odd man out.
That's my thought, and as it should be. He's a rookie, and he needs to earn that. And he's the guy who doesn't play defense, and needs to get better on that end. That said, you have the option to go to a completely different look, and there will be times where it's like, get Dalton in this game. He's going to score 10 points in a quarter because this is a great circumstance for him to be able to score.
So I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate where we're arguing against our presumptions and against the things that we think should be.
Yes.
I think Gabe and Vando should be the guys that play. But you can start to build a case for why Connect can play over either of those dudes for a variety of reasons. And so I'm wondering, as the number 1 fan in the Dalton Connect club, right?
Like buying up all the stock early on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're the guy who had the jackets made. I think mine is in the mail, right? I still got to ship you my address. I could see why you might want to play a Connect over Gabe. For example, you just mentioned the Lakers have potentially 3 lead ball handlers and point guard types in the starting lineup. Why do you need another guard at all to handle the ball? Most teams only deploy 3 kind of point guards, right? And when one of them's LeBron James, it's just like, okay, well, that dude's going to be playing 30 minutes a night, 35 minutes a night. And you could say the same about D'Lo and Austin both being 30 plus minute a night guys. Do you need another ball handling guard? So I'm already making the case a little bit here, but where are you at in terms of Connect's starting to elbow his way in, just as a devil's advocate position?
No, and this is, probably the correct position, not just the devil's advocate one, but we're already low on defenders. We have a lot of guys who can score. We have 5 guys in the starting lineup that can give you 15 plus easily, a couple of them 20, 25 easily a night. And there's so much scoring on the team that I think there's an existing imbalance of defensive players and offensive players. And our 2 best defensive role players are Vando and Gabe. So that, just in and of itself, looking at the needs of the team overall, we're going to score points, but we need somebody next to those guys. And no, we don't need Gabe to be a lead ball handler, but we do need him to be able to guard a guy and knock down a shot. The second part is he's never been a super consistent shooter, but he shot 11% from 3 in the 11 games that he played last year. That obviously it's going to have to hit a certain level, or otherwise it's like, it doesn't matter how good defense you're playing, especially at his size, you have to be able to produce. Otherwise, they're just going to cheat off of you. They were playing him with a big guy with Gordon at sometimes.
Jokic defended him for extended stretches.
Yep. And so that can happen. But in looking at the broader overview of the team of like, what do we need to fill in with role players? Almost always you need role players to play defense as a baseline. And that's doubly so on a team that kind of has a deficit on that front. So if it comes down to the forward position, for one, Connect's way smaller than Vando. He's kind of a small wing to me, whereas Vando is a big wing. But just more broadly speaking, do we need more of what Vando brings to the table or more of what Connect brings to the table? And I think that's an obvious answer. And that's even beside the point that he's a rookie who doesn't know what the hell he's doing yet anyway. And that's going to take some time in the first place.
No, so those are clearly the arguments for why Connect should be the 10th guy. I'm going to go the other direction, not because I believe this, but just because I think it's worth a little bit of game theory and gaming this out. Gabe, to me, I know he wasn't fully healthy, and I know that the way that he talked coming in, like on media day, he seems about as revved up and ready to go as I've heard him talk in his year plus as a Laker. That said, during the playoffs, he looked too small to deal with like a Jamal Murray even. And that's his job. Like on this team, the job that you're describing is to be like, hey, it's the middle portion of the game. That other team has their starting caliber point guard out there who is good on offense. I don't need you to be Gary Payton, but I need you to not be the dude who, like Austin Reeves, can do this job. And in some cases, Austin looked better against a Jamal Murray type than Gabe. And Gabe's offensive utility is still going to be based into, are you hitting enough shots, even though I think that he's got good feel for this style of offense.
Structured play, he's going to really take to that well.
Yeah, I think that Gabe has all of those reads down. I think like all of the DHO stuff, all of the like, oh, I'm going to feint this way and then really like shove off and loop around and come get the ball and like, oh, the biggest showing, I'm dropping the pocket pass. There's so much that Gabe is smart at when it comes to that, but I think Connect's going to do that stuff well too.
Oh, he's going to be great at that. He's going to eat. That's why I'm so excited. Like again, the pressure he puts on the rim, the free throws that he draws, out of all these actions, he can do every option that there is in the decision tree. Like whatever the defense does, he can score in that way off of those type of plays.
That's my point. And so he's not doing that from the point guard position necessarily, but he was a high usage player in college and he's used to playing with the ball more. And I think that he can do some things offensively where it's not like you're asking him to be the guy who dribbles the ball up. But I think in the half court, he can be an offensive usage player that is equivalent to or better than Gabe in doing it at 6'6", 6'7", and a guy who threatens the rim and can rebound better and just has a lot of like good positional size. And you can slot him next to other guys who are likely going to have ball handling responsibility anyway, because even if Gabe is in the game, he's likely going to be playing next to one of Austin or D'Lo and one of AD or LeBron.
Yep.
And all of those guys are usage guys.
Yes. And so that means he's probably in the corner. That's a key distinction in this style of offense is like, are you a corner guy or not? And we've heard this in are you going to corner crash? Rui and Max talking, I need to hit my corner threes, right? It's a position within this style of offense. There's also are you one of the three middle guys in the floor, one of whom are usually a big. Sometimes there's a big in the corner and they'll dive from the corner, but usually that's going to be a perimeter player, two perimeter players and one big setting the screen or running the DHO, the handoff in the middle of that. So to your point, the likelihood that Gabe is in one of those spots, there are a couple of guys ahead of him in line. I've been making a JHS argument similar to this offline, right? So Gabe essentially becomes a corner player at that point, to your point. And so he's not playing the point guard position offensively, really, that he's used to. And so your argument in some ways is sort of a connect over Gabe. I know this is a hypothetical, but it does give the team a different look.
Yes. And so, again, I think it should be Gabe. And I think Connect is going to need to fight for his minutes. And Connect can be a guy who gets a shift a game, maybe, as like a throw-in guy or a guy gets foul trouble. Let's go, whatever.
If I can put a bow on my point just real quick with that, like, if Gabe is consigned to the corner based on there being better on-ball guys on the court anyway, Connect is worlds better at that particular job in terms of scoring. I think, we haven't seen him play a game, right? I'm being presumptuous here, but that's what he does for a living.
But I think you're talking about skill set and size and how that translates to that sort of role. I also think that Connect's athleticism as a corner crasher is much more equivalent to Max Christie than it is to one of the guards. I have a harder time making a Connect over Vando case.
Same.
But I will say that Connect's offensive utility projects to be super valuable. And while I think Vando's defensive skill set is sorely needed as a balancer of lineups, it's one of the reasons why I have Vando in front of Gabe as being a guy who is like in level of importance, right? Because I think Vando's skill set is a plug and play skill set because it's more geared towards defense. And the Lakers have enough offense to surround Vando, where I think that if he's being used appropriately as an off-ball screener and playing in the pocket a little bit, very similar to a big man, that he can be fine on offense. That said, in those times where you're like, we need to give LeBron and AD the most space, but we need someone who's bigger, who can shoot the ball and who can sort of deflect attention from those guys. Connect is an interesting alternative to a Vando who is positionally going to play the same spot, I think.
To me, Connect is a guy in terms of his fit alongside LeBron and AD who will be most helpful alongside them when they're in a spot where in this portion of the game, we're going to turn it up on defense, right? They can't be in cruise control defensively if he's in the game. I just think your defense collapses in a lot of ways if that happens. But he does have that floor spacing type of utility. Let's take a break here. We're going to totally shift gears. There have been a few things that have happened over the last week or so that we wanted to talk about that we haven't got a chance to. So we'll take a break, come back and do that. So today I want to start out with the passing of one of the great characters in NBA history and sort of during our formative years as basketball fanatics. The great Dikembe Mutombo passed away from brain cancer. One of my favorite players that never played with the Lakers, just a great humanitarian, a great ambassador for the game, a legit great player. That's probably what I'll talk more about. But a 4-time defensive player of the year. Just far too young, man. Talk to me about the great Dikembe Mutombo.
So Mutombo played for so many different teams and crossed paths with the Lakers a bunch of different times, particularly as the sort of defensive center that Eastern Conference teams tried to snatch up in order to defend Shaq in a couple of different finals. Like Shaq went toe-to-toe with Mutombo in the 2001 finals where the Lakers beat the 76ers, and the Nets picked him up the following season.
Oh, that's right. He was on the Nets teams. Yeah.
As a backup, right? Just as another big body to contend with Shaq. Prime Shaq was a different animal, and Mutombo's body type was not the type of physicality that really bothered Shaq. Shaq had much bigger problems against like the smaller dudes, the Malik Roses, the Dennis Rodmans, the guys who got underneath him and leveraged their gravity against Shaq. But shot blocking to me is an art, and there's a fearlessness, but it comes from this idea of there's only one way for the ball to go through the basket, and it's right over the front of the rim. And so you have to be willing to go and stick your hand as close to that metal sphere as possible. And if you're good at that, and you have elite timing and instincts for when and where to place your hand and basically be in that spot, you can block a ton of shots. And Mutombo, maybe more than any other great shot blocker I've seen, was great at that aspect of blocking shots as much as he was as blocking the one that came off of your hand.
That was an era of basketball where force was more important. Basketball nowadays has been studied so much more than it was at the time that there's a sort of paint by numbers against whatever defense there is. Oh, we know that if you're doing this, we do that, and then this is how we go around you. If you watch those old games, I always crack up whenever I watch them, but there's a certain amount of, there's going to be 4 dudes in the paint, and you're going to have to get there. And it's a lot of times going to have to be through force. And so a lot of the wings and perimeter players of that era, they had more of that, I'm going down the lane to freaking dunk on you. Whereas now way more of them have that, oh, you rotated over, that means this guy's open. So drive and kick is way more important. It was part of the game back then for sure. But the whole like, oh, we're going to meet force with force at the rim was way more of a thing back then than it is in today's game. And he was just at the apex of that. Like, we're going to meet right here. We have a date right in front of the rim. There's no subtlety to this. And we're going to get down, and just his timing, his size, he had elite physical tools as well. Took a lot of pride in it. All-time great celebration of block shots. He used to wave the finger at the player. Right
in his face.
Right in his face. And that, as you might imagine, caused some issues. And so at one point, the NBA was like, hey, any player, right? We all knew who they were talking about. Any player who's caught waving their finger, we're going to tee you up and all that. And so he adjusted and would turn away and do it toward the audience, right? And I just loved that kind of carried over the years. Way after he retired, everybody knows the Mutombo finger wag. And just in that, it was this sort of joy for playing defense that he also possessed that's necessary to be as great as he was. And so, yeah, that's one of my memories of him, is just like, he loved playing basketball.
That joyfulness extend beyond just blocking shots. Like LeBron mentioned this when he was asked about it at Media Day, but there's that iconic image of Mutombo laying on the ground on his back, clutching the basketball, celebrating basically as the Nuggets defeated
notorious playoff choker George Karl and the
George. Yes,
I know. Sorry, that guy. God bless Lakers Guru on Twitter. There was a point where when we were going through our problems with Russ and all of that, and then the Nuggets go on their championship run, and I'm like, I know George Karl isn't talking shit. I can't say nothing because I'm with the Lakers, and they're like, stop, fighting with people on Twitter. But I'm like, George Karl lost over and over and over again in the playoffs, often to us. I know that guy isn't talking shit. Anyway, I digress. One of the great playoff moments.
George Karl. In Black Panther where, what's his name? Michael B. Jordan's character has all of those notches that are like sort of like scars that are tattooed on him for all of his kills. George Karl should have those for playoff chokes. Little notches where it's just like, so what are all the notches for? George Karl. Oh, that was 1992. Anyway.
Sorry. Petty Pete came out for a moment. I digress. Dikembe Mutombo.
Yes, Mutombo.
I apologize.
The joy that he had for basketball, that was what you realized, and this was during his career, but a lot of post-career stuff too, where what you realized is that wasn't a joy for blocking shots. It wasn't a joy for rebounding. It was a joy of life and a spirit that he had. And you mentioned being a great ambassador and a great humanitarian, like all of the giving back that he did to his community, to Africa, the hospital that he built, the Basketball Without Borders work that he did, the partnerships with the NBA and Africa. Bro, maybe that continent produces all of the great players that it has in present day league without Dikembe Mutombo. Maybe. But I know for sure that his coming to the NBA and being as good as he was for as long as he was, long NBA career, that he laid that groundwork for players like Pascal Siakam and Joel Embiid to be modern day greats, right?
Yeah.
And just way too young, 58. And I remember when it was announced that he was sick, the reporting around that, I thought he had more of a fighting chance. And so I was heartbroken when I saw the news. Just a great, great player, a great, great person, physical as hell, and old school, man. You get in there close when contesting him for a rebound, he's getting those elbows up, man. John Thompson taught him right. And so don't stick your nose in there or lest you walk away with it broken.
Those John Thompson bigs were never faint of heart. Rest in peace to the great, inspiring Dikembe Mutombo. We'll wrap it up here. We will be back tomorrow. We got a Laker game in 2 days on Friday. We'll be back tomorrow, talk a little bit more about how camp is going. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn. He's double team. Just pass out in front. Broken up by Worthy. Tips to Magic. Worthy dives on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic got it. Magic fires. It's good. The Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound of Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds.
Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game.
Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell.
There's the move. 2, 1.
Listen.
Unbelievable. For the victory. It's over. Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me?
2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.